All right, Pete. Pete, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
Grew up in South Jamaica, Queens, which is not too far from here, maybe about 20 miles to the east, which is right in the area of Sutton Boulevard and Lakewood Avenue,
What year were you born?
1941.
1941. Tell me about your parents.
Both American born from families from across the sea in Italy, and they settled up here, and they met, I guess, about 1938, 30, and they got married. I'm an only child of Angelo and Grace, and we live well. The area where I lived, many of our people from the towns in Italy came over they migrated there. We had our own community. And I grew up on Lakewood Avenue, Sutton Boulevard, until we moved uptown, a block down, uh, some years later, where my parents bought their own home. And we lived there until I was about 23, and we moved out to Valley Stream. I'm still with my family.
Good childhood.
Very good. Excellent. No, luckiest guy in the world. Parents that loved me, doted on me. I was like the little king. So nothing to complain about there.
What made you want to be a cop?
Looking for, I guess, a job where I didn't have to work too hard. That's the truth. I tell you, oddly enough, at that time, just to get some employment, because I was working hard. I was working in an Italian bakery. I mean, I worked hard in there. We made our own bread, one of these classic bakeries. We didn't have machines making it. You did it with your hands. So I wanted to find something to do. And I remember taking the job for what they called a police cadet. Police cadet was like a little trainee, kids that were inserted into the police department. And I took that test, and I didn't do that well. I passed, but I didn't do, but I was so far down the line that it never got to me. So when the police test came, that my father insisted I take, I said, well, if I couldn't really do well on the cadet test, how the hell was I going to do any good on the police test? Well, I wrote like a 96 or something. I was way up on top. So there I am. So now there comes a time in my life where my parents want me to go to school. And I really don't want to go, but so I applied for the job. I had reached a point in my life where I got left back in high school. I got suspended. I got all kinds of crap like that. Now they wanted me to go to college. Nobody's going to take me. So I applied to St. John's University, and knowing full well they're not going to take me. And guess what? I got a letter home when my mother gets it. I've been accepted to St. John's. Now I'm in St. John's. And I'm there I get 4 years, which probably helped me become a detective years later when I'm in the police department. And that's how I get to St. John's. So I do 4 years over there, and I graduate, where I was almost kicked out of high school. And now I graduated from St. John's, and I did pretty good. I mean, I did okay, but I wasn't much interested in schoolwork. I mean, I didn't go for the purpose to go to school is to learn, and to learn how to learn. Me, I just wanted to get a degree. I mean, I just wanted to mark time. I didn't even chase the girls around. I just did. Anyway.
You joined the NYPD right after school?
Well, actually, I'm in school when I finally get called for the NYPD. So if I had told you, I got there. I finished my third year. Well, I got another part of the story that's interesting. I'm in my third year, and now I get called for the cops. What am I going to do? Because going to the police department, especially in the police academy, is not going to be easy. And they did it. a friggin' miracle. You can't believe it. I still don't believe it to this day. But in the interim, while I'm in college, in my third year, the Marine Corps was coming around trying to recruit people. And guess what? Dopey joins the Marine Corps. Not that, I mean, it was a great thing. I'm proud to be the fact that I got in, but that didn't work out. I got hurt, and they sent me home. My choice was, it's another scandal, just silly crap. It's one that once you admit to getting hurt down there, but you don't know this until you find it out. You know, the motto is a few good men. So if they bring 1,000 people into recruit school, I mean, they want to knock out 500 before just to say they got a few good men. So I got hurt, and it wasn't no big deal. It wasn't a career-ending injury. I went to the local corpsman up at Camp Upshur, right outside of Quantico, and I reported it. And the next thing I know, I'm on a bus to Mainside, Quantico, to the hospital. We're going to be evaluated. I go down with 59 other guys. I'll never forget, the guy in front of me, his name was Cooper. And the doctor said, "What's the matter?" We're standing in line. And he asked him, "What's the matter?" He says, "His feet." Now, feet were bothering him, whatever. Now, if you're a doctor, somebody tells you that their feet are bothering you, what do you think the doctor might do next? Take your boots off, right? Never happens. The guy goes, "Right, sure." So they put us all in a room, and they said, "Look, if you sign a piece of paper saying that you didn't get hurt here or aggravated an injury, we'll send you to the hospital, and by the time we finish with your evaluation, you may be too late for the officer trainer school, and you'll go to Camp Lejeune as a non." So if you do sign and say you didn't get hurt, you're on your way home, and you'll never get drafted. You got an honorable discharge.
This is for the Korean War?
Hmm?
Korean War?
No, this was just at the beginning of the Vietnam War. I'm not that old, but the Vietnam. So you'll never get drafted and say goodbye. And by that time, I says, this is all bullshit. I mean, the Marine Corps was good. But think about it. And I went home. Now get this. The police department, who had already investigated me, doesn't know about this. And there's no reason for me to report it to them because it was after my investigation. And when I got asked about it later, I told them I was in the Marine Corps. You what? Where? We don't have that. I was being interviewed for something that I never learned. The story is insane. And that's it. But I did a bit in the Marine Corps. So now I'm in the PD. While I'm in the academy, I get interviewed. I'm the only Italian guy there. Everybody else is Irish. What the hell's going on here? I found out when I graduated from the police academy. My lieutenant told me they were looking for somebody to go undercover. You know, with the Italian mobs, the Gallows and the Profacis were shooting each other in Brooklyn, but I didn't get the spot. You know, anyway, just to take a sip. So now I'm in the PD, working patrol in the 105 precinct. All I want to be ever is a detective. That's all I want. I remember one day I was at a detail, Midtown Manhattan. There was a lieutenant who I didn't know on a horse mounted. And I was, with 2 years in the police department, I'm complaining that I couldn't crack the detective. I mean, it was insanity for me. And I never, you know, it's funny the things you remember, because this guy, big tall fella, Jewish name, didn't know me, and he offered me advice. He says, "Kid, I'm going to tell you something. Anything you want in this job, if you try hard enough, you might get. You probably get. Including becoming the police commissioner. You're just working on it. Says, all I want to do is be a detective. Oh, so one day, a year or so later, I'm driving the duty captain where this lieutenant from the precinct detective lieutenant from the precinct that I worked in, is standing in the doorway in the rain, and I see him and I recognize him. I say, "Hey, Lieutenant," I say, "you need a good detective." That's how I got into the detective bureau. Simple as that. He said, "Yeah," he says, "his name is Koenigsberg." Yeah, he says, "I could get you a job in 9 to 5 doing some kind of hard work, a property clerk or something." I don't want a property clerk. I want to be a detective. I said, "Okay, kid." He says, tomorrow I'm going to see the inspector for the detectives in the borough office at 103. He says, when you get done tonight, type up a resume of what you've done. Nothing specific, but just, and I'll go see him and I'll give it to him. Got it? So I type up a brief, nothing official, and leave it on his desk. In the meantime, he's asking about me of his detectives. And the next thing I know, I get summons to the borough office to see an inspector. His name is Wolfgang Zangerlein. And he interviews me, and I find that they like me, but so they're going to forward my name downtown for a possible interview. So I go downtown, it was Holy Thursday, for an interview. And there's an inspector, the people that are going to interview me is an Inspector Paul Vetrano, Deputy Inspector, McGowan, and Deputy Chief Bluth. And I'm at this interview, and I'm doing very well with it. And when it's over, Inspector Vetrano asked me, do I know who he is? And I says, yeah, I think so. You're in charge of the Staten Island DA's office. He said, no, I'm Manhattan DA's office. Okay. And he says, do you think you have time for an interview? Would you walk down to my office after this interview, and I want a couple of people to see you? I said, well, are you kidding me? Sure, I'll go there. And I go and I do an interview with Charlie Garabedian, Ray Gleason, the lieutenant. And I do this interview, and it went well, no big deal. And again, this was Holy Thursday. So I go do my normal duties, and on Easter Eve morning, I'm turning out for what they call a late tour, 12 to 8. And there's this guy, Vinny Martucci, he knew everything about anybody. He was one of those guys that, that was keyed in. I was too young to be. And he tells me about it. He says, you went for an interview? He says, yeah. He says, well, listen, I might as well tell you. He says, you went with 6 other guys. The board passed you and recommended that you were for the detective bureau. I just wanted to tell you that. But the chief of detectives killed it. No good. So, thanks a lot. Appreciate the information. Very appreciative of the Manhattan DA's office for even giving me the interview. So Monday morning, I go down to Manhattan DA's office to thank them for what they did. At least it's a beginning. Let's see what happens. He says, don't worry about it. So the next day, what they call, I worked the 124 room, which is the clerical office where you took, and the orders come in. We used to get the orders used to come in on a single little folding paper, and it tells you where people are going. And I open it up. Patrolman, PTL, but they were called as patrolmen then, not police. Peter Fiorillo, transferred to the NYDAOS, effective March the 30th, 1967. I was now in the detective bureau. That's how I got it. No magic, no nothing. But I think it put a pretty good show on. I mean, at that time there weren't that many people with college degrees, and I had a full college degree, and I knew how to dress, I knew how to talk, certainly a lot better than I am now, and I got there. I became a detective, and stayed there for 15 years, 1967 to 1982. After about 3 or 4 years, they caught wise to me when they figured out myope. And I was assigned to drive District Attorney Frank Hogan. Now, that was supposed to be an honor. It was, but I didn't want that. I was a detective. I don't want to be a chauffeur or bodyguard for the DA. And he was a great man. And now I'm driving him. When Mr. Hogan's regular guy takes a heart attack, I'm like Ensign Pulver. I know the inspector is looking for me because I'm going to be a candidate to be the new driver for the DA. But he catches me, and I owed him. If he asked me to do something, I had to do it, and that's it. So that temporary job, for me, lapsed into the time Mr. Hogan dies. I'm with Dick Q, he's the interim DA, and then Robin Morgenthau. And that temporary job that was only supposed to last a couple of weeks until they got a new guy in, became, 10, 12 years? And I finally got out. Screaming and yelling, I don't need this bullshit. And I threw away a whole future. That was I went to Queens Homicide Squad, and I was happy as a pig in shit, because now I was out of Manhattan. As you know what, Manhattan's not a nice place to go. Much of my detective time was the bodyguards for Hogan, Dick Q, Robert Morgenthau. I mean, those stories we can't even talk about. So, police stories, when I became a detective, when I went back to the detective bureau and I threw away my whole future in a post-employment, because I had the world by the balls. I had anything I wanted. I left the Manhattan DA's office. I left Morgenthau. I mean, Morgenthau, I don't know if you know who that is, but he's like a major player. Major. And I gave it all up. I said, I just want to go somewhere, mark my time, get out of this job, be a cop again, get some overtime so I can enhance my pension, and I'm gone. And they wouldn't let, and that's what I did. So when I get out there, I'm in a whole new other world with other people, and actually, I don't really do anything good until I'm out of the job and I stumble across a case. And that's a long story how I got there. I mean, that would take something where you would have to sit with me for hours to understand what happened.
Can you tell me just an overview of the story?
Well, the overview of the story is I'm out of the job. I'm gone.
You're no longer a cop.
No longer a cop. And one day, a guy who was in jail, a lawyer who was framed by Elliot Spencer, the governor, he asked my son-in-law, who's in jail with him, another guy that was framed by the son of a bitch in Suffolk County, who's now in jail himself, the DA, he wants me to check for his own purposes, this guy, Frank Zarro, he wants me to check on a guy by the name of Fezza, Fezza. So I go into the computer like anybody else, because he's in jail. It's hard for him to do. And I check out Fezzer, but I get the wrong Fezzer. I get a Fezzer that's a detective in Queens. And I started reading this story. When I started reading this story, he was involved in the arrest of these guys who they would subsequently arrest for killing a police officer, a detective, in a holdup. And when I start seeing the names involved, I worked with those detectives, but I had been retired. So naturally, I start reading it like anybody else. So as I'm reading it and reading it and reading it, oh my God, these guys are friggin' innocent. No question about it. So I start getting involved in it. And another interesting, by the way, that leads me to go to Greenhaven Prison. You'll like this one. I go to Greenhaven Prison to visit this guy for rah-rah-rah. I mean, in my mind, I know he's innocent. So I'm just going to say somebody's trying, who the hell am I? I'm nobody. And I go up there to see him. Now, I'm up there for a couple of hours. I don't know if you've ever been to a prison. So I go up and see this guy, George Bell, in the prison. This is a crazy story. So naturally, a lot of people are sitting around me. And there's a guy sitting with his lady friend in back of me and everything. And he sees me there. And he goes, after I leave, he says to George, hey, who is that guy? I'm a white guy in the prison. Maybe somebody could do him some good. He says, oh, he's a guy trying to help me. I did help him. I got him out of jail years later. Help got him out of jail. I'm not the lawyer. He says, would you mind if I wrote to him? And he says, no, go right to me, gives him my address and everything. So I get the letter. And I open the letter up. It's a pain. Who's going to bust my balls now? So I'm reading the letter and I'm going like this. Can you see it? I'm shaking. He's describing the day when he was arrested almost 25 years earlier. You know, the actual event. And guess who arrested him? Me. You got it? I was assigned to go with my boss to go into Manhattan to pick up a guy who they wanted to arrest for shooting a cop who didn't get killed. And I grabbed him. I put him in. And I brought him back to the precinct. It had nothing to do with the case. He was sitting right behind me. What are the chances of that? I mean, is there something called Providence? You think there's something up there we can't control? This guy here, all the hundreds of people that were in that room, of all the days and minutes and hours that transpired, of all the places that sit in that room, I'm there on that day when that guy is there. And that's the only time I ever went there. You follow what I'm saying? And this guy, I'm trying to get him out now. And I tell him, I said, mister, you took a beating. I write him back. I says, I didn't think you did it then. I still don't think you did it. And the beating you took that I personally saw, that I probably would have participated in if I had a chance, because you shot a cop. But don't forget, when I brought you in, you shot a cop. But then quickly became aware of the fact that you'd shoot anybody, in my opinion. So right now we're working. So I write to the parole board, and I'm told, based on that letter that I wrote, what I saw, they put him on parole. And he's out, and he's still trying to get himself exonerated. He only did 30 years. 30 friggin' years for nothing, because these chowderheads decided they were going to arrest him.
So you helped get him out? You helped get him out?
I got the parole. No question about that. I mean, that's what they told him. So we've never seen this before.
You think that happens a lot, where people get put away for things they didn't do?
Oh, absolutely. Too much. Too much. You know, one is too much. God knows how many. Here's a guy. Do I have any hard evidence that he didn't do what they charged him with? No, I don't. But you know, same thing like in your business. You know what's right, you know what's wrong. Nobody can tell you, you can look at me or look at somebody else and say, hey, this is going to be a good interview. What the hell do I know? I think this is dumb. Why would anybody want to listen to, see anything that I'm doing about me? I'm not interesting. You might think so. So when you see something like this, they told him, we've never seen this before. Because I told him specifically, took a beating, and man, if I took a beating like that, I'm going to confess, and then I'll recant later, just to stop the beating. I says, then he comes out, and he goes before the parole board, and unless he admits to doing that, even he knows, everybody knows, that he will never see the light of day unless he says he did it. And he's going to stay in jail. And that's what he did. He would not say he did it. And that 3 or 4 years that they offered him in the beginning is now 30 years. Enough. And it happens a lot. Main guy. George gets out, and his 2 partners get out. The guy that I went to see, he's living a good life now. He's doing the best he can. The guy, they did 24 years. They're going to be worth at least $20 million a piece, the 3 of them. And you know how much I got for that? Not a nickel. That's not why I did it. I wish they would throw me a few bucks one day, but I wouldn't even ask them.
So you got someone else out.
Well, it's George Bell.
Tell me about that case.
Well, like I said, I started reading this thing about Fezza, and I started realizing that the Fezza that I was looking for
Is the wrong one.
was not the Fezza that I got, which brought me into reading about the case online, knowing the detectives were involved, and reading more deeply into it. Oh, by the way, one of the first things I got when I started looking, because just out of curiosity, not my intention to ever get anybody out of jail who killed a cop. Not even if they laughed about it, and they were in California at the time, and they thought it was a joke. I ain't getting them out of jail. I'm not going to do anything. So when I'm reading this, as I'm reading, I had the confession. The videotape, a lawyer sent it to me as I was progressing. I mean, you look at that confession. Oh my God, I mean, he's guilty. No question about it. But he's not. And what happens is I had one of the detectives at work who got the confession, lives near me, and I started wondering, just because it's who I am, I go to see him, and they said, do you think George is guilty, Gary's guilty, but Rohan, I don't know. They said, do you think it's worth taking a look at again? And the guy's very upset with me. That case is gone for years. And the next thing he does, he's mad at me. How much money you making? I'm not making anything. I just asking you a question. That's the way I was brought up in the police department. And he is pissed off. He walks away from me. Just take a look at it. I mean, don't you take any pride in doing the right thing? Anyway, the next thing he does, he calls his friend, my sworn enemy, and my kid's sworn enemy, because they have hooked up in a private thing they had outside of the police department. And he calls this guy up. Now, the last guy that I'm going to talk to, or my kid should talk to, is this son of a bitch that he calls. And that guy finds my son, goes through the trouble of finding his cell phone number, and calls him. I got even the date he called. And he wants to know, he asked my kid, what do you know about Charlie Davis? And Charlie Davis is the cop that got killed. And my son called. My son doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He wants to find out. He's scared. Charlie Davis is the name of the cop that got killed. And my son tells me, what the hell is this Rick calling me for? What, who the hell is he? Where's he get the balls to call me, even speak to me? He tried to ruin my life. And then I know, right there's a problem. There's a big problem. Because these things don't happen unless they're running scared. And this murder happened 10 years in the past. But I know, and that's where and that led to me writing to one of the biggest law firms in the country that do mergers and acquisitions, not criminal law, the last part. But I had a reason for that too. I wrote to them and I got in touch with one of the partners. I kept on emailing him. Nobody's going to listen to me. And then one day, after about a year, I get an email that said, we're taking the case. Now they had to, you know, as much as we like to bash lawyers, we all do. I mean, these guys took this case on not a nickel. They took it on pro bono. And billable hours, God knows how much. If it was good, I could bill them at that. But they did it pro bono. They had 20 lawyers off and on working on the case. Millions of dollars. And they are the people that got him. They are the people that went to trial. Well, they didn't go to trial. And got them out of jail. Got them out. One of the most scathing rebukes of any judge, any case in the history of Queens County.
This was after you became. You were already retired.
Yeah, I'm out. I'm out 10 years. I don't know how many years I'm out. I could care less. I'm not making any friends with these people. But these are bad guys. You don't put innocent people. Bad enough that you put innocent people in jail by mistake and error, but to do it intentionally.
Did they find out who did it?
Well, yeah, they know who did it, but that didn't play in the exoneration process. They know who did it now, but nobody. You know, is another part of the case. Speed stick. They never bothered to even look. They didn't care. You know, you have enough to do. If you wanted to look the case up, I could tell you where to look. I mean, it's a horror show. The whole thing is a horror. How they can get away. And they still get away with it because nobody wants to admit that these things happen.
A lot of corruption in the police department?
No, I don't think so much in corruption. Their minds are corrupt, but there's no money being made. But they're looking for fame and glory by framing innocent people because they got to get it to look good. You know, this is what they do. They solve a big case. Right now, the thing when I'm in the car, I'm watching. They got a whole thing out in Suffolk County that's been going on. You're probably not even aware of that at all. It's on the front pages. It's corruption from the word go. It's about they say they broke the case of what they call the Long Island serial killer. The guy killed 3 people so far, maybe more 4, but 3 they got solid so far, and they're making it. It's been going on. It's an unbelievable. They got involved in that too. But the guy who they got looks like he did it. We can't make this up. And that's been consuming my life because it's personal. They're all full of shit, let me tell you that, okay? All of them. They all make up stuff to suit them, but they ignore the truth. In fact, I was talking to one very prominent person involved in that case we're talking about. How could you deny this? I said, you just got to look at it, read it. How can you deny it? How can anybody deny it? An idiot could understand it. I mean, literally, I'm speaking. I could talk to anybody in the street. A 6-year-old can understand it, but you choose not to understand it. because it doesn't suit your needs. Yeah, I discuss with those.
You regret being a cop?
Regret? No. It's a great experience. Regret? What I wanted, I grew up on Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. and Jimmy Stewart and the FBI. I wanted to be FBI guy. And I figured the easiest way for me to get into it, because at that time, if you weren't a lawyer, if you were an accountant, you could get in. So I took a full course in public accounting. And I just got too lazy to pursue it. I was offered a job at the drop of a hat with the Internal Revenue Service as an investigator. He even told me where I'd be. He said, "You want to come aboard?" Nixon was putting organized crime task forces together. I had the background when I went down there. I just happened to stumble into something. So I had background in organized crime. I had an accounting background. The guy who I was speaking to said, "Hey, these guys, they were looking to recruit me." And I turned the job down because I was happy where I was. I was in the DA's office. That was like being in, anyway.
How has New York City changed over the decades?
I don't know. I don't come here. You got this police department. I mean, you got this joke running the city. It's going down a drain as far as I'm concerned. But it's always, listen, from the first day I became a cop till today, it's always, the job isn't what it used to be, they tell you. You always hear that. But it's not. And I would not advise anybody to take this job. You got to be crazy. Unless you are resigned to taking the job, scheming, and doing nothing. Well, it's a perfect job there for you. That's what it is.
You were married? You had kids?
Yeah. Got 2 kids. One's a cop, and one's a housewife. One is my daughter is a somewhat victim that she married a Suffolk County cop who got framed by the DA, who, by the way, is in jail right now as we speak. Okay? You got it? He's in jail. They framed him because of a horror show. The police chief, right in paper there, all you have to do is look. The police chief, he's in jail and he got out of jail because he finished his time over there. And every day they write about him in the paper. These people put an innocent guy in jail just because they wanted to. It's hard to explain. But nobody wants to recognize this. Not the current DA, not the DA before him, and certainly not the DA who's in jail. DA in jail, you know what that means? Do you understand this? In a major jurisdiction like Suffolk County, that district attorney is in jail, in federal prison for being part of trying to fix a case for a cover-up. And the guy who he's supporting, who beat the guy up, I mean, he's a walking nightmare, this guy. Everybody knows it. Are you gonna be in New York for a while?
Mm-hmm. All week.
If you read this stuff, it's gonna be in the papers every day. That the son of a bitches. This is what drives me crazy. At least, this is almost like therapy. I should pay you. Because I know at least this stuff is good. Somebody's going to listen to it sooner or later. Part of it anyway. Because I've been having a hard, because nobody wants to listen. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's all bullshit. Always has been.
What would you say is the most important thing you've learned in your 85 years?
Let me think. Most of life is bullshit. What you see is, let me put this is a great opportunity. I mean, I might go down in some kind of a book somewhere with that. Pretty much can't change. You are what you are. Some people could change it. I mean, people tell me, stop. You're driving yourself crazy. You're absolutely right. But I'm compelled. My nature is I have to do so because I've seen too much of it. It's got to be fixed, especially what's going on in this whole world. You realize all the people that are going to jail, they shouldn't be there. Well, maybe they should be there, but it's just wrong. It's just wrong, and there's nobody there to stop them. At night, I lose sleep because I'm thinking about this. I'm so frustrated. I'm trying to get one little thing fixed. That's all I'm trying to get fixed. The son of a bitch, you know it. It's script. Anybody who reads it, a moron can read this. I mean, I can explain it to anybody. If they give me the time to explain it, and they say you're right, and they choose not to.
Do you find you have less energy to fight these fights now?
No, I got the energy, but the only thing I'm concerned about is that I'm going to blow a gasket. You know the guy that introduced me to your crew. I mean, he's a character.
He is.
I think you know who I'm talking about.
My dad.
You know how I got him in my phone book? You know what name I put him under?
Right.
Not Robin Hood, I call him. He was a, quote, bad guy. He was a bad guy, but an honest guy. When they say bad. There's another guy who just died recently. Before you met that guy, this guy was the crookedest cop in the whole world. He just died. Name was Bill Phillips. And he was a bad guy. And he died from natural causes, 93 years old. And I believe he got framed of a double murder that he didn't do. That's a long story. I mean, this would take a scholar. And I've talked to scholars, people who wrote books. I mean, guys who wrote books that thick.
There's still flaws.
Literally, huh?
There's still flaws in the legal system, aren't there?
Oh, tremendous flaw. Nobody. These people are hacks. That's all they are. Where do you think they came from? These sons of bitches. They came from sucking around in different jobs, and you know what they're like? They're like little me's. Like I said, I took the police job because it wasn't a job where you worked hard. That's what these guys do. They become judges. They're all, that's what, they're cushiony. They got nice jobs. They got pensions and everything. There's one guy, I'm going to get that son of a bitch before I'm done. And I think I caused him enough grief out in Suffolk County. These are bad people out there. These are bad friggin' people. Nobody wants to do anything about it because they don't have the courage or the balls to do it.